Greetings from the Tech Cave, Fenris here, and today we are doing something a little different for Fenris Finds. Now, if you've been following me on Instagram or Blue Sky, you would know that I recently took a trip to Japan. We left on the last week of April and came back on the first full week of May. When we flew out and flew back, we first landed in Hawaii to go from one plane to another. Now, personally speaking, I had never been to Hawaii up until this trip, and even though we stayed in the airport, it was just really nice to be there. And hopefully, I am able to take a vacation specifically to Hawaii one day. But with the 2 hours that we were there for, I did get to explore like a little garden area that they had there, and it was a really nice break between flights. But there's always a calm before the storm, and the storm is in the form of the flight from Hawaii to Japan, which was roughly 9 hours long. Now sure, I had my Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance to keep me busy, but it was still a really long flight each time. Now, when we got to the hotel in Japan, it was in the middle of the night and we just crashed on our beds. Now, in terms of the bed situation, there was two beds. There was a king-size bed, which was for the other two party members that came with me, and a smaller bed that was inconveniently placed underneath the hotel TV. That was my bed, and I certainly was concerned the whole time that I would eventually hit the TV by accident. Thankfully, I didn't, but, you know, there was always that concern in the back of my head. Now, we had a really cool view of the area from both the hotel dining room and our hotel room, which we also randomly spotted one day a red carpet event outside of our hotel room window, which turned out to be the premiere of the latest Mission Impossible movie. So, yeah, go figure. Now, each day, I got to enjoy a complimentary breakfast of miso soup, spuds, eggs, bacon, fish, and rice, topped off with some tea and a ginger ale. Actually, come to think of it, I ate a lot of food in Japan, and all of it was like super delicious. Like, it was so good being able to eat fresh food every day. And hell, even the American restaurants that were there just hit different, you know? And the sweets, absolutely amazing. Now, I'm not showing everything that I ate there. I only took a few pictures, but you get the basic idea. Now, as far as where we went, we didn't go to some of the more scenic areas like Mount Fuji, but we did explore Shibuya, Shinjuku, Kappabashi, and the big one for me, Akihabara. We actually went to Akihabara 3 separate times just due to how much there was to see there. We also went to Shibuya twice, but that was mainly because we wanted to try again with the Pokemon Center and Nintendo Store after we got crowded out the first time. But luckily, the second attempt wasn't nearly as bad as the first, and we got to see the other stores that were in the same floor. They had a Shonen Jump store, a Capcom store, a Minecraft store, and even a Godzilla store. And based off of the font of this wall, it looks like Sega is also coming to play soon. So hopefully I can come back to see how that plays out. Now, the last 2 days was spent in Disneyland and Disney Sea, which, while the main park was rather small in scale compared to Disneyland USA, Disney Sea was the polar opposite, being way larger than California Adventure or Disneyland Japan. Now, in terms of scale, of course. Now, we got to explore the park, go on a few rides, and of course, eat more food. But eventually, though, we did have to say goodbye to Japan and fly back home. And with that, we're back at the lab. Now, this isn't like me jumping to another day or whatever and while I'm filming this. This is literally after I just got back from a long flight from Japan to the United States. And you know what? I'll save my thoughts about the Japan trip towards the end, but for now, let's go over some of the stuff that I picked up. Now, I'm not going to go over like some of the candy that I picked up. It'd just be kind of redundant. I'm instead going to focus on all the other merchandise that I picked up. So we'll start things off with all the gaming goods, and then we'll end it off with some of the Kamen Rider merchandise that I picked up. So let's get to it. So the first store that I went to was a little shop called Retro Game World. Now, this shop is pretty interesting, as literally right outside the store, they just have a few bins out labeled as junk items, and they're going for like really good prices. But when I went through the bins, I found that I didn't really need anything out of those bins, except for this little guy right here. This is a Famicom Disk System RAM adapter, and it was just labeled as junk. I don't know exactly what's wrong with it, but for 1,000 yen, I wasn't gonna say no to that. So I was looking through their games, and they had like a lot of Famicom, Super Famicom, some Mega Drive, PS1, PS2 games and whatnot. And they had like a wall of Game Boy games. Like, oh my god, they had a great selection, but prices were like kind of all over the place. So I mainly wanted to focus on games that I knew that I didn't have, as well as stuff that I knew that I would need. So in terms of the games, one of the first ones that I picked up was this one. This is, if I remember correctly, this is Magical Toro-kun. This is based off of a Japanese manga of the same name. And if I remember correctly, the Mega Drive version was an action platformer. Same with the Famicom version. And I'm not too familiar with the Super Famicom version, but I would imagine if the Famicom and Mega Drive versions of this game were platformers, this one would probably be the same. Next on the list, I picked up a copy of Space Invaders. Now, this is because a good friend of mine, she is obsessed with Space Invaders, and I figured, you know what? I'm going to pick up a copy of Space Invaders since I don't have it on the Super Famicom or the Super Nintendo. So yeah, Space Invaders for Super Famicom. Next up is this. This is Super Bonk, as we know it here in the States. And I was struggling to remember whether I had Super Bonk 1 or 2. It turns out I didn't have either, so yeah, all those Super Bonk 2s or PC Genshin 2s that I passed up on, yeah, gonna need to pick up a copy now. But you know what? I'm just glad to have one of them at the very least. So yeah, Super Bonk. And as you can see here, I picked up not one, not two, but 3 Super Game Boys for 780 yen a piece. Now, why did I pick up a bunch of Super Game Boys? That's because I'm going to be trying to do a little project, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but I need all these Super Game Boys in order to pull it off. So, yeah, content for the future. Alright, next up on the list is Hard Off. Now, you may notice here that I only picked up 2 things from Hard Off, and the reason why is because Hard Offs in Akihabara are pretty expensive, like stupidly overpriced with most of their stuff. Like, I was seeing junk Super Famicoms there for like 3,300 yen, and I was like, no, I'm not paying that much for a junk Super Famicom. I'm sorry. I mean, don't get me wrong, they had some pretty decent deals on like loose cartridges, and I was able to find this console as well, but other than that, like, their prices were like way more than what I felt comfortable paying for like most of those games. So unfortunately, Hard Off is not like this safe haven of like retro gaming goodness like it used to be. So kind of a bummer, but whatever. I did still pick up a couple things. So first up, I picked up Bomberman 2. I've been meaning to pick up a copy of Bomberman 2, just kept neglecting it, but now I finally have a copy, so yay. And then next, I picked up the 16-bit Compact V2. This is a Super Nintendo clone console, and this is one that I actually don't have. Now, this would be released here in the West under the GamersTech brand, but I just wanted to have one of these for my collection, just due to the fact that we don't have like these Japanese-style Super Famicom or Super Nintendo clones over here. Alright, next up on the list is probably one of my favorite shops when shopping around in Akihabara, and that would be Surugaya Specialty. And I got quite a bit of stuff from Surugaya, let's just say that. In fact, I have some stuff on the side here that I can't even get in camera shot just yet. But let's start with some of the basics. So, I did pick up a few Famicom games, and these ones are all Konami Famicom games. I don't know the exact titles for all these, but I've been trying to go for a complete OG Famicom Konami collection. So the fact that I was able to find these at the prices that I could find them at, this one was like only 100 yen, for example. And these weren't too terribly priced either. Like, they may be more than like what some people may be comfortable with, but you gotta think of it from my perspective. I live in America. Importing can be really expensive, and I still, even after like import fees and whatnot, I still paid less for these games than I would have if I was to go through like eBay or J4U. So yeah, I'm really happy to get my hands on a few Konami Famicom games. And as well, I picked up a couple more Super Game Boys, this time for 800 yen a piece, which, hey, you know what? Still under 10 bucks, so I was willing to pick these up. And then I picked up these. Now, these are Kamen Rider games for the PS1. We got Kuga, Agito, and Ryuki. Now, these are not for me to keep. These are actually going to be given to a friend of mine who lives locally that happens to be a Kamen Rider fan. They asked if I could like keep an eye out for them for like the PS1 Kamen Rider games, and I decided to oblige. And sure enough, I was lucky enough to find the first 3 of the Heisei era for sale, and for not too terribly priced. This one was like, I think 700 or 800 yen, and these were the more expensive ones of the bunch, but you know, still relatively cheap for what they are. And then finally, for like the smaller stuff, I picked up Muscle Bomber, which this is Saturday Night Slam Masters here in the West. I picked it up for 500 yen, which is a steal. And I finally picked up a copy of Contra Spirits for 2,000 yen, which is also a steal. This would be Contra 3, The Alien Wars. But now for the big ones. So let me just set all this stuff aside. And let's start with these. Now, as you can see here, I got a couple of Neo Geo MVS games, and I was really surprised to see these displayed in like a little glass case. But when I was looking through, I realized they had King of Fighters 94 and King of Fighters 96. These were the last 2 King of Fighters games that I needed to complete my King of Fighters MVS collection. I have all the other ones in legit cards. I was just missing these 2. And for 4,500 and 4,900 yen respectively, I was not going to say no to that. So with that out of the way, the final item that I picked up is this beast right here. This is a Model 2 Sega Saturn, and as you can see, it's seen much better days. But I picked this up for roughly $25 USD. So I wasn't gonna pass up a Sega Saturn for 25 bucks. I mean, sure, it's junk, but that doesn't matter to me. You know, I can fix this baby. All right, and next up on the docket is Beep. And before I continue on, there is something I just realized. I haven't been really explaining what each of these stores entail, so let me back up a bit. So Retro Game World is, well, as the name suggests, it's all about retro games. But Hard Off, as well as the stores Book Off and Hobby Off, they are basically Japanese thrift stores that focus on specific items. So like Hard Off specifically focuses on hardware, including games, but mostly like consoles and guitars and whatnot, maybe even laptops. Book Off specifically focuses on books, and they also do carry games. And Hobby Off specifically focuses on hobby-related projects. So there's that. And then there's Surugaya Specialty Shop, which, as the name implies, these stores specialize in certain things. So there are shops that specialize in anime, there's shops that specialize in manga, and in the case of the one that I showed earlier, I ran into the one that specialized in video games or retro games. And right next to it, I mean literally right next door to it, is Beep. And Beep is kind of a basement area that specializes only in retro games, as well as some arcade games as well. And my god, they had the best junk pile that I have ever seen throughout Akihabara. So like, we got Super Famicom controllers here for like $300 to $400, 300 to 400 yen, sorry, a piece. I'm sorry, I'm getting like really excited here, but yeah, that's insane for junk controllers like these. And then we got GameCube controllers here. These were all 500 yen a piece. And that's crazy, especially since these are all first-party GameCube controllers. And this controller in particular goes for way more than that. This is the Emerald GameCube controller. Now, granted, it's a bit yellowed, but once I clean it up and throw it in the Retrobyte box, it's going to be as good as new. Oh, and of course, I picked up an AV cable. This is a first-party one. 100 yen. I figured why not. And even the handhelds. I mean, granted, yes, it's a little more than what I would normally pay for a handheld. But 3,500 yen and 4,500 yen for a Game Boy Color and a Game Boy Advance, yo, these go for way more in this kind of condition here in the West. So I'm willing to pay that price if it means getting a couple of broken handhelds. And then, of course, we got the games, or at least two of them here. We have Marvelous, which, if I remember correctly, the current director of Zelda, this was one of his first projects. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I just can't think of the information at this moment. But I saw the Digino Gaming video on this, as well as My Life in Gaming talked about this game a little bit. So I was interested in checking it out. And then I have Cosmo Gang the video, which this game I remember seeing on a GameSack video in particular. So I was really interested in checking this one out. And this is an interesting piece right here. This is a demo tape for Konami games. This is what they would play in stores back in the day to get people hyped for the new releases. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, these tapes contain unreleased game footage. So I'm really curious to see what's in this tape. But that's not all. Because I also found some junk consoles. So I got this OG Famicom here. Yeah, it's seen better days, but I got this OG Famicom here for about 1,900 yen. A little more than what I would normally pay for a Famicom, but considering it's a non-FF unit and the fact that, you know, I wasn't really finding any junk Famicoms, I was willing to take it at that price. It's still way less than what you would get off eBay. Then we have a junk Mega Drive. Now, Mega Drives go for way more than 2,800 yen, so I was happy to pay the price for a junk Mega Drive. Hopefully it's just a little dirty inside, and that's all it takes to get this puppy working. And then we have another clone console. This is the Game Cassette Computer Next 2. This is kind of like a cheap Famiclone type console, but this one was only about, I think, 300 yen, if I remember correctly, with the box and everything. So yeah, definitely was willing to pay the price for this one. Also, almost forgot about this, but I also picked up this Sega Saturn from Beep for 2,980 yen. So yeah, much like the Model 2, that's a steal for an old Model 1. So let's just pull this off. Yeah, that's all I need to say. Now let's move on to the next shop. All right, next on the docket is Trader. Now, Trader is a buy, sell, and trade shop, hence the name. They do video games, like they have a few floors dedicated to video games, but they also do like manga, anime, and like Gunpla or figurines and such. Now, there are two traders in Akihabara. There's Trader, and then there's Trader 2. Now, Trader 2 I'll get into more later, but for the meanwhile, let us focus on just the regular Trader shop. So, I picked up a Sega Saturn controller to match the Model 2. And I also picked up not one, but 2 copies of Dodge Donpei. And the reason why is because Dodge Donpei is the cheapest donor for Mr. Gimmick or Gimmick. Now, and the reason why I bring that up is because there are 3 different types of mappers that you can find on a Dodge Donpei. You can find the FME7, the Sunsoft 5A, or the Sunsoft 5B. Now, the FME7 and Sunsoft 5A are basically identical. They're just different names. However, the Sunsoft 5B is what is used for Gimmick, the original Japanese release, for expansion audio. Now, you're not guaranteed as to what map you're going to get with these cartridges, so typically I like to buy a couple of them just in case I get one with the Sunsoft 5B, and as you can see here, I do have a copy of Dodge Danpei that has the 5B. So if yours has the 5B, you can basically make this into a reproduction cartridge of Gimmick, the Japanese version. If not, if you have the Sunsoft 5A or FME7, you can just go ahead and either keep it as is, or you can use that to make Mr. Gimmick, the localization that was never released in North America, but was released in Scandinavia. So with those out of the way, I also got a copy of Gradius 2. Now, I was surprised that I did not have a copy of Gradius 2 up to this point. So when I found it for just under 3,000 yen, I was like, sure, I'll definitely take it for that. And this here, so this was a Super Famicom blind bag. So all I could see when I picked it up was this copy of Kirby Bowl, or Kirby's Dream Course, I think it was called here in North America. And I didn't have a copy of that, so I was like, sure, for I think it was 980 yen, I figured I'd take a shot. So I ended up getting Kirby Bowl, Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden 2, which this is a duplicate, Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden, which is also a duplicate, Prime Goal 3, which isn't a duplicate, but I don't really care too much for it, and Zelda no Densetsu Kamigame no Triforce, or Legend of Zelda Link to the Past. So this is also a duplicate, but I think this one might actually be a nicer copy than the one I have. I'll have to check later. But yeah, this was a pretty nice blind bag. And as you can see right in front of you, I picked up a Neo Geo AES game for 4,780 yen. This is Art of Fighting 2. I can't think of the Japanese name at the moment, but this was the cheapest Neo Geo AES game that I could find throughout the entirety of Akihabara. Now, I did find some loose carts that were even cheaper, and I'll get more into that later, but I prefer when I buy Neo Geo AES cartridges that they are in the casing, unless otherwise, like say that there's like a really expensive game in the case. I'd rather have that loose just so that way it's much cheaper. The only thing I haven't checked though is if this had a manual. So let's just get it open. So yeah, for just under 5,000 yen, I was willing to pay that for Art of Fighting 2. And it doesn't have a manual. Oh man. Oh well. Still glad to have Art of Fighting 2 though. Alright, so next on the docket is a shop called World Mobile, or as it says outside the building, Geo Mobile. Now, when it comes to this shop, from first glance, it looks like a shop that primarily deals in cell phone technology. But it's when you go up to the third floor is when you find, oh wait, they actually do sell junk consoles. And I wasn't really sure what exactly I would expect to find here. I've heard people were able to get some pretty good deals from this shop, but I wasn't sure if I was going to find any, and at this point in time, I was pretty limited in storage space, so I had to be a little careful, but to my surprise, I was able to actually find some stuff. So, first piece here is a 1,100 yen PS1. Now, this PS1, the reason why I picked it up anyways, is an SCPH 5500 model. The reason why these are special is because these are considered to be the best model of PS1 systems. And not to mention, if you want to do an X Station and a PS1 digital mod, this is the kind of PS1 you want to get. Now, granted, considering this is a Japanese unit, you will also need to swap out the BIOS if you want to play anything outside of the Japanese region on it. But that's not the only thing I found. I also found these. What we have here is a couple of 880 yen Famicom systems. Now, granted, yes, these look rather disgusting, but that's not the point. The point is, I got these for really, really cheap. So, I could not leave these behind. I had to snatch them up. Now, in terms of what models these are, though, this one is an FF unit, while this one, let's remove the sticker, is a non-FF unit. And I have to say, for a non-FF unit, this one is, well, aside from the yellowing, is relatively clean, I have to admit. So if I clean off all this dirt, it should look pretty nice. Maybe I might have to do some de-yellowing because this part is yellow, but should clean up much better than the FF unit here. And the last thing I found, and it would be blasphemous for me to not find these, I found a couple of junk Super Famicoms. Now, these units are S2 models, so basically these would not contain the SHVC CPU01 motherboard. These would contain some of the later 3-chip unit motherboards. So this one, for example, is S20, so this is most likely a GPM revision motherboard inside this unit. And as for this one, this is an S24. Now, this is going to either be a late RGB 02 or an APU 01 model Super Famicom. Either way, these both should be plenty serviceable, and for 1100 yen, I was not going to pass them up. Okay, and what we have here is basically just a random assortment of gaming goods that I got from like various vendors. Some I don't really have much to talk about, others I may have some stories on. So let's just go over each of them. So first order of business are these. These are the Nintendo Switch Online Famicom controllers. Now, I don't remember the name of the store that I found this in. It was a store that advertised that it did retro games, which it did, but they were like super overpriced. But their selection was mainly catered towards like modern gaming. But I saw they had these at a pretty decent price, and I figured why not? I picked them up. I mean, I do have a project in mind for these two. Next on the docket is this random Super Game Boy that I found in a corner anime store. They had like a small section of retro games, and there wasn't really much that I was interested in, but this stood out to me, and I think this was like 800 yen, so I was like, why not? I'll pick up another Super Game Boy. Now this was found by a street vendor near the second trader store, and the reason why I picked it up is because number one, it's just another clone for my collection, but number two, I like how it has the kind of Splatoon font and coloring to it. So I was like, yeah, I need to take this home with me. And last but certainly not least, I have here a copy of Arcus Odyssey. Now, this comes from a store called Mandarake Complex, and this was another store that I didn't really look into until my third day in Akihabara. And right off the bat, that store had like a whole 100 yen section where I was able to actually pick up a Progrise key, which I'll be showing later, but that was a good sign for just, you know, checking out the store for the first time. But as I went up to, I think, the 5th or 6th floor, that was where I found they had a lot of games. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't film much in there, mainly because, well, they had a no filming policy, but I did see that they had a wide selection of games, and games that you wouldn't normally be able to find in a lot of other shops for reasonable prices. They actually had a couple of Neo Geo AES loose cartridges for really reasonable prices, but I had to be really conscious about space by this point in time. So I settled for a single copy of Arcus Odyssey for the Mega Drive. This game is normally pretty expensive, even in its Mega Drive form. So for 2,970 yen, I had to pick it up. Now, next time when I go to Japan, I'm going to actually make sure that I hit up Mandarake first, so that way I can get some of the harder to find games that I've been looking for. So that's it for the gaming stuff. Now we're going to move on to the Kamen Rider gear. Alright, so next up, we're going to be taking a look at some of the merchandise that I picked up while I was in Japan. Primarily Kamen Rider stuff, but I did pick up some other stuff here and there. So, with that out of the way, the first store we're going to be taking a look at is this really large shop that I ran into while I was in Akihabara. Now, unfortunately, I don't know the name of it at this moment, but while I'm editing this video, I will put the name of it right here. But needless to say, this was a really large store. Like, we're talking like it had like 6 floors of different goods and services available. Like, on the bottom floor, it was like, you know, just a lot of laptops, batteries, and stuff like that. You know, just general electronics that you would see, you know, in a place like Akihabara, which is also known as the Electric Town. But then, like, you go each floor up, and they had, like, something different. Like, you had a whole floor dedicated to PC stuff. You had a whole floor dedicated to, like, beauty supplies and house appliances. And all the way on the very top, in the 6th floor, you had toys and games. Which, that is what piqued my interest the most. Mostly the game stuff, but I figured, while I was wandering around there, it's quite possible I might run into Kamen Rider merchandise. And lucky for me, that's exactly what I ran into. So let's get to looking at some of it. So, first order of business, I picked up a couple of Kamen Rider figures here. These are like really soft. I think they're not foam. They're just plastic. But I picked up a couple of figures here. This is Kamen Rider Kiva and Kamen Rider Build, 2 of my favorite riders so far. And as well, I picked up a new driver for my collection. This here is called the Gav driver. This is from the latest season of Kamen Rider, which is Kamen Rider Gav. The way it works is that you put in these little guys here called Gochizo onto the tongue, close it, crank the handle, and you hit the button on the side. So yeah, that's basically how the Gav driver works. I know this part of the video is not like really gaming related, and then this is a retro gaming channel, but you know, I really like Kamen Rider, so I figured I might as well share some of my other interests here as well too, right? But in addition to the driver, I also picked up this. Now, this is called the Gochi Pod, and this is basically the power-up for Kamen Rider Gav, or rather the final form. At the time of recording this video, it had only debuted within like the past episode or 2 ago. But yeah, this thing is yeah, it makes sounds, but this thing is rather large in scale, and the way it works is, well, much like the regular Gochizo, you place it on the tongue. And let's see if I get it in. You close it. And yeah, you can see it just barely fits in the driver, but you know, it's pretty cool. And when you hit the button, out comes a face. So yeah, there's that. But in addition to the Gochi Pod, I also picked up some Gochizo. In fact, I picked up a lot of Gochizo. So these ones I got from a capsule machine in Japan. And trust me, there are a lot of capsule or gashapon machines, as they're called, in Japan. In fact, there's like whole stores where it's just floors of these machines. And in the 6th floor of this department store where I was at, they had a section dedicated to gashapon. So I found that they had a gashapon machine that was distributing a Gochizo for the Gav driver. So since I was there to pick up a Gav driver, I figured I might as well, you know, throw some yen in and get some Gochizo. Now, these were 500 yen a piece, so they weren't like necessarily like, you know, pennies to $1, but they were still pretty cheap. And yeah, in fact, let me see what we got. So this first one here, it's blue. Let me see if I can pull out one of the stickers just to get a better look. Come on. Oh, okay. So this Gochizo is Kamen Rider Vulcan from Kamen Rider 01. The next one that we have here, this is one of my favorites, Kamen Rider Kiva. In fact, this is the one that I was mainly going for when I was messing around with the Gashapon machines. Don't forget that paper. Next, we have... this looks like Kamen Rider Blade. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. I have yet to actually watch Blade personally, but yeah, it's neat to actually have the Gochizo at least. And last, but certainly not least, and no, this isn't the last Gashapon that I got. I got a few more, but I'm not sure what this is. If you can read what that says, feel free to let me know in the comments, but yeah, I'm just gonna call this the Gold Gochizo. So yeah, that's what we got with the capsules. But as far as this here, these are Legend Rider Gochizo. Much like with the other three that I described, these are based off of past riders that came out before GOV. So we have Kamen Rider Decade, Kamen Rider Build, and Kamen Rider Geo. They actually had more of these, but I only picked up this one because this one had the one of my favorite riders, which is Build, on it. I was tempted to pick up the other ones, but they were actually sold out, so kind of SOL there. And last thing I picked up at this shop, and this one's not Kamen Rider related, but I picked up a Furret plush. Now, this was in the Nintendo section of the store, and for some reason, out of a bin of plushes, this was the only Furret plush that they had, and no one was paying attention to it. Like, it was just being left there, ignored. So, you know, it being friend shape, I wanted to take the friend back home. Now, next up on the docket is Surugaya Specialty Shop. Now, this Surugaya was rather small in scale, but they didn't really have like any video game stuff that I would be interested in. However, they had a lot of like anime and manga merchandise, which did definitely catch my eye. And typically, shops like that, when they carry anime and manga merch, they would also carry Kamen Rider merch. Not always, but a lot of the times when I was exploring Japan, they did. So I noticed that this particular shop had a couple floors. So, whoops, I knocked over the camera, but so I went up a couple floors because I saw a sign that said that they had a whole section dedicated to Tokusatsu. As soon as I walk in, good lord, they had a lot of Tokusatsu stuff. Like, we're talking Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, Ultraman. They even had like Godzilla stuff there, which was beautiful. Like, just walls upon walls of different toys specifically for those shows. But considering the fact that I was running out of space, I did have to be very conscious about what I purchased. So this is what I got from there. Now, a couple of these items did originally come with boxes, but I did have to break down the boxes, unfortunately, just to make sure that they would fit in the suitcase. So at least I got them over here, though. Now, what you are looking at here are Progrise keys. And these are the gimmick items for Kamen Rider 01. And they go with this. This is the 01 driver. Now, I did not buy this in Japan. I already had this in my collection to begin with. But the way that these work is that you take one of these keys, you scan it onto this little IR reader here. I think this is an IR reader. It's some kind of sensor. You flip it open, and you put the key in. So, plain simple. Now, they are supposed to make like various sounds, but I did make sure to turn off the driver so it wouldn't activate any of those sounds. But as far as the keys that we got here, let's start with this one. This is Shining Hopper. This is the super form for 01, which he ended up getting a super plus form afterwards that requires this little piece right here, but I'll get to that in a moment. Then we have this. This is the Hell Rising Hopper key. Now, this key was debuted in the movie Real Eyes for Kamen Rider 01. And this is basically like a crash out form for Aruto. It's, from story-wise, it's a key that is filled with the entirety of humanity's malice. Now, in terms of like how it actually functions, other than the different sounds, it's basically just the Shining Hopper key with this piece right here. And what this piece is the Assault Grip. You can detach it from this key right here and just attach it to Shining Hopper. Like so. And it makes a different sound when you do it like this. Like when you... Let me just remove that. When you just do Shining Hopper, it makes that sound. But when you equip the Assault Grip... Oops. It says Hyper Jump. And this isn't the only Progrise key that's compatible with the Assault Grip, obviously. It originally debuted with a different Progrise key called Assault Wolf, which I don't have, unfortunately. But this grip came with this key right here, which is called Dire Wolf. And this, along with Serval Tiger, were a package deal. And I was really eager to pick this up because it also came with the accompanying movie, Kamen Rider 01 Others. Hang on a second. Kamen Rider 01 Others, Kamen Rider Vulcan and Valkyrie. There we go. So, funny enough, we did get 01 in with English subs here in the West finally, but out of all the movies that they made for 01, this is the only one that is for 01 that didn't get an English subs, at least officially speaking. So with this, I actually have all the Kamen Rider 01 material on Blu-ray. And it also came with the soundtrack as well. Now, unfortunately, even though it's sealed, the the jewel case got damaged during the transit. So that's unfortunate. But hey, the disc does look like it's still intact, so I'm not too worried about that. All right, next up on the docket is Trader and Trader 2. Now, I already explained what Trader was earlier, but as far as like Trader 2 was basically like a very small version of what Trader 1 is. And I think it only had like a couple floors at max. But even though it was a small shop, they still had like a lot of really cool stuff to look at. But so let's start with the first one. So for the first Trader, I got these two Progrise keys right here. We got Punching Kong and Biting Shark. Now these were in a bargain bin for I think like 300 yen. So I wasn't going to pass them up, especially at that price. And as for Trader 2, I picked up these two pieces right here. Now, there was more at the shop. I remember I saw like Hibiki's, Kamen Rider Hibiki's tuning fork, as well as the Muscle Galaxy full bottle from a Kamen Rider build. But the reason why I didn't pick those up was because I don't care too much about Kamen Rider Hibiki personally. As far as like the Muscle Galaxy full bottle, again, I was like really concerned about space at this time, so I didn't want to like, risk something, like I didn't want to risk like an overflow. But these two items, on the other hand, they're much smaller, so I could work with these. So what we got here is something called a Vice stamp. Now this is from Kamen Rider Revice.
which I guess you can consider like an anniversary season since it came out for the 50th anniversary of Kamen Rider. Now, I don't have the Revice driver to show you like how these work, but basically how the stamps themselves work is you press a button, it says what animal it is, and you press down. Now, the reason why I got this Vice stamp is because even though it has a hedgehog on the front, it's actually supposed to be inspired by Kamen Rider Kiva, which you can actually just barely see Kiva's mask in the background of the Vice stamp. And that's kind of the whole gimmick with the Vice stamps in Kamen Rider Revice. They're all themed after legend riders or past riders. So yeah, I definitely had to pick up the Kiva Vice stamp. And last but certainly not least, we have Metal Cluster Hopper. Now, this is both a crash out form as well as a super form for Kamen Rider 01. And the way this works is that you activate it, you slot it into the 01 driver, and then you fold this part over. And the reason why I'm not demonstrating it with the driver is because this will set off just from being in the driver, so didn't want to do that. So yeah, this one also did come with a box as well, but like with the other Progrise keys, I had to throw it out just to make space. And to wrap up the Akihabara pickups, we have these 3 items right here. Now, these 2 items came from a shop called Liberty Akihabara, which was just like a really small one floor shop that had like a bunch of anime and manga figures. But in the corner, they had some Kamen Rider stuff, mainly like figures and whatnot. They didn't have any drivers or gimmick items, but they still had some merchandise that I was interested in. So first in the docket is the O's armor from Kamen Rider Zio. I actually picked up 4 of these because they were 500 yen a piece, and I figured, you know what, I'd pick up one for myself and then have the other 2 for some friends of mine. So got that. And as well, I got this little McDonald's Kamen Rider build figure here. You know, it looks kind of derpy, but you know what, I think it's pretty neat. And then last, but certainly not least, is this Zetsuma Rise key. For it's basically a Progrise key, but it's meant for like a different type of driver. These were like considered the bad guys of Kamen Rider 01. But in any case, this key right here I got from Mandarake Complex, the same place where I got Arcus Odyssey for the Mega Drive. And this was in their first floor where they had like a whole section of like 100 yen toys and what have you. And they just happened to have a Progrise key there. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll pick this up for 100 yen. Why not? So with that out of the way, this is all the Akihabara pickups. So now we're going to move over to the stuff that I got while I was in Shibuya. Now, it isn't like a ton of stuff, but I still think it's interesting. Actually, really quick before we move on to the Shibuya section, I did also pick up a random pack of 5 Pokemon cards. This was found in a random vending machine in a card shop for 900 yen. And the annoying thing about that machine, though, was they had plenty of these 5 packs, but for some reason, even though I had 3 1,000 yen bills, it only took one of them, and it was the pristine one. The other 2, which had like mild folds in it, for some reason that machine just would not accept it for the life of me. So I don't know what was going on with that, but I managed to at least walk out with 1 pack. All right, so second to last on the pickups, we got more Gashapon. Yeah, I went to one of those multi-floor Gashapon shops and decided, you know what? Let's go gambling. Because, yeah, I went straight for the Gochizo capsule dispensers or Gashapon dispensers just to see if I can get more for my driver. Now, they had 2 different series there. There was like a Series 1 and a Series 2. And the one that I was originally messing with back in Akihabara, and they had one there too, that were in these green capsules, these were Series 2. Now, for these red capsules, on the other hand, they contain Series 1. So, let's see what I picked up, shall we? We'll start with this, since this is kind of the outlier of the bunch. Just, there we go. And yeah, we got a duplicate here. This is Kamen Rider Vulcan. Oh well. All right, next, for Series 1, let's start with this one. This is, that looks like a nut. That might just be a nut. That's interesting. Alright, let's open up the next one. This is Kamen Rider Live. This is the secondary rider from Kamen Rider Revise. Alright. Next, we got... Oh, this better not be another Vulcan. No! This is Kamen Rider Blades from Kamen Rider Saber. It's basically Saber's secondary rider. Alright, next. Ooh, what do we got here? Ooh, this is Kamen Rider Ghost. That's pretty cool. Wasn't expecting it to be like a double window. Alright, last but certainly not least. Okay, so it looks like we did get lucky with the Series 1 and actually get 5 unique Gochizo for that. But we got... this is Kamen Rider Hibiki. So yeah, that's what we got with those capsules. So lucky me. And to wrap up this little pickup section, let's talk about my experience at the Pokemon Center in Shibuya. Now, once you enter, you will see that there is a tall, like, Mewtwo figure, and you'll be like, wow, this is really cool. I can't wait to check out the rest of the shop. The first time I went was still in the middle of Golden Week, and my God, it was packed. Like, it was so packed. As soon as you stepped in, you were being ping-ponged all over the store. It was that nuts. Like, you could barely breathe, let alone move in that shop. And all I managed to get out of it was a Haunter sticker, as well as a sticker of N from Pokemon Black and White, but that's already packed away for a friend of mine. And as well as a box of Pokemon cards. Now you'll see that I have 2 of the same boxes. That's because I came back a different day when it wasn't as packed, thank God. And I managed to pick up another box of this set, which unfortunately I don't remember the name of at this moment, as well as a couple of packs of Prismatic Evolution. Now, I gave those packs of Prismatic Evolution to a friend of mine because I knew that they were looking for some. But these ones, on the other hand, these are for me to keep. Now, I don't really collect Pokemon cards per se. I just figured, like, you know, with all the hype surrounding it, I might as well grab like a couple of boxes. And the intent was I would keep one sealed and then open the other. But unfortunately, when I bought the other one to open, I bought it with the idea that I would be opening it with a good friend of mine. Unfortunately, they just been really super busy, so, you know, for the time being, I'm just going to keep them both sealed. Maybe we might revisit it, maybe we won't, who knows. But in the meantime, I do have a couple boxes of Pokemon cards. And no, this doesn't mean that I'm going to suddenly be getting into Pokemon card collecting. I just like opening the packs. Like, the experience of opening the card packs is what I like to do. And yeah, these packs, actually, just to bring it up real quick, these were about like, I want to say like 5,800 yen, which is like roughly like 50-ish bucks. So yeah, not bad. And with that, that's all my pickups from the Japan trip. Now, the burning question though, what did I think about my time in Japan? Well, you see, Japan has always been on my bucket list for things to do. Like, ever since I was little, I have always wanted to go to Japan at least once in my life. Like, I knew I would love it from just seeing like pictures and videos of other people going to Japan. So I'd always wanted to go there myself. And to be honest, I did not expect just how much I would love being in Japan until I showed up, because it was an amazing time. Easily one of the best vacations that I've ever had in my life. Like, I was filled with just so much wonder and intrigue just wandering around Japan. Like, what could be around the corner for me to see? What awaits me in this brand new world for my eyes? And it did not disappoint at all. Like, even though I was on my feet all day, every day, I was never tired. I just wanted to keep going and going and going. And like, especially when I got into Akihabara, like, it was like something ignited in me that had been dormant for a long time. That fire for collecting games had just went full flame. Like, I was excited. I was absolutely loving it every second of it. Like, I was going shop to shop, like, eager to see what awaited me in their junk piles or their shells and whatnot. Like, it was just an amazing time for me. And considering how I'm the kind of person who doesn't normally like take vacations and whatnot, it was a much needed one for me. And you know what? I am so glad that I took the opportunity to take this vacation, because it is an experience I will never forget. And I hope one day I can live through it all over again. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. In terms of like channel updates, I do have some stuff in the back burner for Fenris fixes and Fenris mods, so just stay tuned for that. But in any case, as always, until the blue moon rises, I'll see you next time.